Michelle there. Could you? Thank you. Read my mind. All right, so I don't know that we have to follow the order here. I think I'm the one that put the above the first item about JIRA access. Maybe that takes a little more discussion. Why don't we go through the status first and see if we can move through that at a pretty good clip and then come back to the discussion. So Sean, I know a lot going on with you. Why don't we start with rock status?
Yeah. So yeah, I got Aether Rock Umbrella 1.36 released. Thanks to Daph for helping me out with Jenkins. Yeah, I don't really know what it was in the end, but it worked, and yeah, it released it properly. And so just to summarize, there were a couple of big changes in there. They were all internal, doesn't change really any external interfaces or anything. So there was a patch, I think, for 1.6.2.6, and that was basically where when you were restarting a rock from a system that had a PVC, it had been corrupting it, and that should be fixed now. So that was the 1.6.2.6. Another change that I put in last week was there is an internal interface to the model plugins, and there was a size limitation there of 4 megabytes, and I changed that to be chunked. So this was one of the things that we had identified, back at the end of last year as one of the contributors to the size limitations on Rock. It's not the only one, but it's one of them that needed to be resolved. So that's resolved in this release. We updated all the internal dependencies, like all the Go libraries and all the new updated build tools and that kind of thing. Also, then I updated the documentation as for ONUS config specifically, because it really hadn't been updated in like probably 2 years. There's a lot has changed in Aether, in ONUS config since those notes were last updated. For instance, we had things like there was a rock GUI, an ONUS GUI at the time, and that's obsolete. And we used to have that you could do transactions, and we're not supporting that anymore. So I took those out, and then on the Aether project docs, I updated those as well. So maybe if you can just click on that one, Larry. Yeah, this one here. I hope it has updated. Yeah, if you just scroll down about a page. Yeah, so this table here is important. So as you can see there, for 2.1.36, the last row, we're using atomics chart now, whereas in the previous 3 minor releases, it was atomics runtime, and prior to that, then for earlier versions, it was 2 different charts that had to be installed. So that's really the important thing of note, and I will be updating Aether in a Box with those next week, probably even later this week, to use those versions and this new Aether Rock Umbrella. And then the other thing under securing Rock there on the left-hand menu, it'll just bring you up in the gray space, yeah.
I'm sorry, which,
Securing
oh,
rock.
there it is, securing, yeah.
Yeah. So I updated the documentation here. All of the infrastructure that we had, like Keycloak Dev in ONF, is gone away, and so I created a new way of running your own Keycloak server, and I added in things like Ether in a Box Enterprise as an enterprise here, and so that's the other thing I'm going to do in the next couple of weeks is create a document on running Ether in a Box in secure mode. That's something we discussed on the TST previously, and that will be coming up in the next couple of weeks. So
That's great, thanks.
yeah, if you can just go back to the agenda, then I think there's a previous tab. Yeah, that's really what I have in the planned section then. So update Ether in a Box and its docs, and then add the doc on securing Ether in a Box. So that's more or less it.
So this is, I'm not putting this one on you, but just for the TST broadly, and the same thing happened with SD Core. You released a new Helm chart. I'm going to guess that 99% of any of the quote unquote users that would pick up Ether and try it would do it via Ether in a Box, possibly Ether on ramp, and those will break until this happens. Because latest is the default, and latest is going to is not going to pick up the right Helm charts, I have a feeling.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts or the TST more broadly on how we ought to deal with it? I'm super happy that you're gonna get to it, but I'm just wondering if there is, from a TST level, an approach we ought to be taking here. I guess
I don't know if this is the broad approach for the TST, but at least in the context of Ether in a Box, in the past, what we've done is had the notion of building a certain release in Ether in a Box, which pointed to the correct versions of the various Helm charts for that release. I guess that's essentially just all that a release is in the context of Ether is a bunch of versions of the different Helm charts. So we already have a mechanism for doing that in Ether in a Box, but I don't know if it's what we want to continue with moving forward.
Well, I think that's right, and one could, I've kind of tripped over that myself because it's labeled as release 2.1, except we're still within 2.1. We just released something, so we don't really have a release step function for Ether in a Box, so in the same way that we do for the rest of it. I mean, you could argue there was stable, and maybe we could call it stable 2.1 or something, and this is just a yet to be made stable release. But the default is latest, which will grab the latest Helm charts, and that's what's going to break for people. I think just flagging this as needing attention, and I mean, we kind of have an indirect notion of talking about 2.1. It's really 2.1.36 of rock is as close as we've got to an actual release number for Ether as a whole. Okay, probably enough said about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think when Ether in a Box was rolled out initially, the velocity was fairly high on the Ether releases and slow on the dependencies releases, like atomics and bonus operator. But it's kind of gone the opposite way now. There have been updates of atomics. We've gone through 3 generations of atomics while we're still on Ether 2.1. So it's kind of reversed a bit. And yeah, I don't really have a good solution for it. I mean, I think the way we are, like as you saw from that table, you know, we when we're talking about latest, we're talking about 2.1, and I think we don't add in support of earlier 2.1 releases once we once we go to 2.1.36, we're not worried about supporting 2.1. Anything earlier. And I guess the question is that okay?
Yeah, I don't know what the right answer is. I mean, I don't think you have to go back far. I think it's just maybe arguably the transition period that this bites people. And one fix, arguably, is we make the default in Ether in a box and Ether on ramp the last known stable version. It lets latest incorporate the new, the new rock, the new SD core until we're satisfied that it's stable, and then we can update stable and latest is
Right.
temporarily the same. I'm just going to note this for now. And by the way, if you update Ether in a box, it's easy for me to update on ramp to match it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, but I mean, I think like I don't know if there is a stable. Were you proposing that there would be a stable?
I was just I mean in Ether box it's called release 2.1, which is a little confusing to me because they're all 2.1. So I was thinking, I don't know what you would call it. Since we're calling the other one latest, maybe we call it stable.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's stable 2.1 because we anticipate one day there'll be a stable 2.2 or something.
Yeah, yeah. I'm interested to hear Andy's view on it.
And on ramp, I had contemplated changing it to stable just because right now I have turned latest into the older.
Right.
Because in fact, I've got a note down here, the SMF pod keeps restarting in the quote unquote latest SD core.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, I mean, the top level issue here is what is an Ether release? Well, practical purposes, it is whatever on ramp / Ether in a box.
Yeah.
Well, I'll put together a little proposal. Maybe Andy and I can put our heads together on how we might conventions for dealing with this.
Yeah.
Anything else, Sean? This is all good news. Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's it from me, Larry. Yeah, that's all I had.
All right.
Can I just say a big thank you to everybody who's done so much work on this. It is so much appreciated. This is huge. Thank you.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, thank you.
A quick question here. So as I understand, the latest will is going to break. So does that mean that we should still hold on until this works and then take it to the testing?
Well, so Sean has been testing this, and in fact, I thought that was in here somewhere. Maybe I was misreading. Sean, can you say what tests this has passed? Let me just put a bullet in here.
Right. Yeah, so it has passed my tests locally and the local integration tests of honest config. Now the Ether test suite, I haven't had a chance to fully test that yet, but I was hoping that's what you guys were going to do, Sagar. I mean, I think it is ready for you to test. As far as I understand, you don't install this through Ether in a box, right?
Yeah, we do. As a part of this testing, we do can install the Aether in a box, definitely.
Oh, I see.
Earlier our understanding was to test these as a part of the subscriber scalability. But with respect to the detailed update that you just gave, and thank you for that, I see that there could be a little more scope than just the subscriber scalability tests. Is that my right understanding?
Yes, I okay, I don't know if that was a question for me.
Yes, it was for you. Yeah.
Right. So the scope is really you know, the things that are in Aether system tests, which was API and all of the internal functionality of Rock in itself. You know, and just Rock as a standalone entity really is what I've been testing.
So I wanted to record that. So you've been testing it locally, but what you were testing is basically Aether system test?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and they don't have a dependency on, you know, SD core or anything like that. I mean, I just run Rock standalone is what I mean by locally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, tested standalone. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a Rock standalone. Okay. So we should follow the same thing and try and see if we can onboard subscribers anything more than 900. Is that what should be our scope for testing only?
Well, I think the scope should be 100% test coverage if possible, you know, and I know we can't get there, but, you know, we're trying to do a full test, not just a very focused test on one capability.
I mean,
Right.
what's emerging here, if from what I'm observing, is we're doing component testing. This happened, same thing happened with SD cores, happened with rockets. I would call it component testing. And it needs to be kicked up to Ether wide. So call it integration testing if you'd like. And the way we integrate integration test right now is with Ether in a box.
Right.
So that would be the next step. I think that works just fine. Coming back to the point I was making for Ether in a box and Unrec, we probably ought to make latest not the default, but have something else that's call it stable. And stable implies that you've already been through the integration testing. And there
Yes.
could be a point where latest gets you component testing, but not integration testing, and therefore it might fail.
Yes. That's very well put, Larry. Thank you.
Okay, so let's make that the plan of record for now. And we
Yeah.
can debate exactly what we call stable, but that's
right. But that's correct. The point that I wanted to you know, make sure that I understand is that something that we can get and start the testing at least component wise, or do we need to still wait for till the integration passes?
you still need to wait for Sean to make the plan to pass over Ether in a box.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that makes it clear. So Sean, please do let us know once you know, you are done with those changes, and then maybe we can do a quick discussion or maybe a call to really want to understand, you know, what should be the scope of all those changes. Because with respect to the securing the AIAB and other things, I see that there could be a lot of increase into the scope than what we initially thought.
Yeah. I mean, I think the secure side of it has always been well, yeah, I don't really know from a test perspective whether that has been tested previously.
I doubt that it has.
In an end-to-end test. I mean, we have a set of tests for it. You know, at the component level, but yeah, we're not doing end-to-end testing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that makes it clear. So we'll wait for your green signal, and once you give us the green signal, we will do the first scope out, and then we'll start the integration test.
Sure. And like once we have that, once I finish that document on how to run Aether in a box securely, then I think you know, maybe there will be scope to think about new tests
Yes.
to test Aether in a box securely.
Yes, it's true.
So
Yep.
just to be a little bit more explicit, is it fair to say that, Sagar, your role ultimately is to take latest and to create stable, to do the integration testing and get us to the point of declaring the stable release?
Yes.
Yes. Very good.
Yep.
And as part of that, for you to document what's been tested and to be iteratively continuing to increase the scope of the testing.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll bring this in line instead of a comment, but the plan of record components tested in isolation and available as latest on Ether in a box. After QA testing / integration tests, promoted this stable.
Well, is it really promoted? I don't know quite how it works, but latest will always be whatever's latest in the tree. But
Yeah, latest is always lated, tagged.
I think tagged. I mean, basically tagging the release and declaring it stable.
Yeah, tagged is fine. Yeah.
Tagged as a numbered release, right?
Well, so the problem is we would be making up numbers at this point. If we just call it, I mean, we need to revisit yet. I'm just going to keep doing it that way for a while. Currently inheriting Rock's umbrella chart. And I mean, in effect, as long as we have the distinction between what's been tested, all on-ramp and Ether box R is an integration of all of these components. Arguably, that integration effort could itself fail. So, with that caveat, whatever they claim to be the latest or stable, doesn't matter what number you put on it, as long as we're not trying to keep past versions numbered or labeled. Otherwise, you've got infinite number of stables going back, and you would need a number for them. We just haven't gotten to that point yet.
Yeah, one more thing with respect to the latest comment that you added, a plan of records. I believe the component tested in isolation and available as the latest on AIAB, which is right. And I believe after QA integration test, before we even start the QA integration test, I guess we are waiting on a green signal from Sean to ensure that the integration is available.
Yes,
right?
That's correct. Now, all right, so now that during that time that you're testing it, what do we call it? I think it's still latest. He will make changes to Ethernet box. Those changes will be made to latest.
Yes.
And as soon as latest is qualified, then we'll tag it stable. And for a period of time, stable and latest will be the same. That's fine until some other changes come along. But yes, you're waiting for an update to Ethernet box.
Yes, yes. If you can, I mean, if we can record that as a part of your comment.
I mean, the same thing happened with SD Core.
Yes.
Okay. I'll try to reduce that to something a little bit more, a document and try to summarize it and link to it instead of side comments like this. All right, so I added a little bullet. Oh, Ether Central Pronto shutdown transition, Scott. So I'm guessing Scott's on the line and has something to say there.
Yeah, I snuck that in there because I never know how long I'm going to last in the meeting until I'm pulled off to something else. But O's is supposed to reach out to Hyman, to Stanford, to others to let people know that we are likely going to be shutting down or handing off Ether Central at the end of this month. I don't think that has any impact on ONF, but in case it did, I wanted to make sure you guys had got your notice.
Have you been in conversation with the universities and what their plans are? That would be the impact on ONF if they're expecting us to do it.
Yeah, so I think, O's is going to start that dialogue, start the dialogue with Stanford. There were some of the questions we had. Does, ONF want to take this over? But, that's really up to you guys to, involve yourself in that space if you have interest there, I think.
Yeah.
But from our perspective, it's going to be shut down on our resources fairly soon.
Yeah, got it. Thanks. Timon, I don't know if we have any more to discuss on this in the TST call or not.
Well, in many ways, I would look to the TST for part, it's not a kind of an ONF decision. It's more whether the project would see value. But, over the last year, we really were taking steps to divest ourselves of, Ether Central Pronto. So I would think that there isn't necessarily, direct appetite to take it over. Now, that said, Larry and I did just recently have a discussion about, running kind of a live network of some way, shape, or form. And so there may be an opportunity here if we wanted to use it. The opportunity might be more around the equipment. I mean, what's going to happen to all the equipment at all the sites?
A good question.
That I don't know. I mean, the thing is with Ether Central, it comes with a cloud resource bill. So, that it's an expense that someone has to pay to keep it. Whereas, the equipment doesn't necessarily come with an expense. But I would know. I don't know if Andy knows what happens to the Pronto equipment.
All I've heard is that there's no restrictions on that equipment, that I don't know, it sounds to me from what I've heard, like third hand, that it's pretty much up for grabs, that the sites can keep it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really know.
I think I heard the same, and nobody's required to destroy it. I understand sometimes you have to destroy stuff, but I think I explicitly heard we don't have to destroy it.
Yeah, the conversations I've had with the universities is they are expecting to keep their hardware and to continue running Ether. Now, where that impacts what Timon just said is that our approach from an ONF point of view is not to run a single multi-site version of Ether, which Pronto did, but instead to allow individual organizations to run their own. So we're releasing the software with the tooling to support it, and we may participate in a couple of sites to help debug that process. And the universities could be among those sites, but it would not be through the multi-site central cloud Ether model that we used in Pronto.
So this could be an opportunity then to transition to that new model, and then that gets rid of this sort of budget expense item of having to pay for cloud infrastructure. It could be completely decentralized. Each university could host their own, we'll call it an Ether local instead of an Ether central, host their own Ether local on their own hardware. So there's opportunity for Ether there, I think.
That's right.
It creates somewhat of a vacuum if we shut it down. We don't necessarily want university research to just falter because there's no no, because either stops working. I don't think that's in anyone's best interest.
Well, it's going to happen though. I mean, there's no two ways about it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we'd recommend to each university to turn up Aether on-ramp using the
That's what I would recommend to them. Yeah.
And they could do it proactively, and there'd be a date when Central's going to be shut down, and hopefully they get on-ramp up before then. That's up to them.
That's about 7 days.
Yeah, well, it's up to that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Scott, take that back to O's in his conversations. And I mean, I've been talking to all of these folks on the side as well, and they just have not recognized the urgency reality of the situation.
Yeah. That's my concern, is that, there are people doing research and they don't realize that someone is actually going to pull the plug.
Yeah.
And
So
in the near term.
Let me do the on-ramp status right now, and we make it very brief, which is I'm working with another university, Purdue. We have an intern. He's hard at work getting the multi-node cluster up. And all the universities except for Stanford have only 4 E-node Bs. They don't have G-node Bs, which is unfortunate. I think Stanford has 1. I know this is something we talked about with GS Labs, but it turned out to be, it's harder than it appeared at first, having to do with network configuration. So one of the things that we're doing is, as part of this is, and progress is coming along. The student has it working to some level, but we're going to pull the simulator out of the core and have it be standalone in a separate VM, or at least in a separate container in the same VM. And communicating with Kubernetes through the external network. And this is going to simplify the network configuration a little bit. So whether you're an external simulator or an external G-node B, you'll talk to SD core through the same networking machinery. Now, that's not going to be ready for Stanford, Princeton, and Cornell in 7 days, but hopefully within a month or so, it'll all be pulled together.
Yeah, but the current version of on-ramp's available.
But the current version, they can get started, yeah, and they can run. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so separately too, there was one G-node B purchased as part of Pronto, I believe.
Yeah, Stanford has it. I asked if I could borrow it, and they're not making it available.
So, but at the very least, it would be great if they would turn up on-ramp using it,
Yeah, that's true.
rather than it just going idle.
I would agree with that. Okay. Let's keep moving here in the interest of time. Scott, are we done? Or did we already?
Yeah, we're done. I just
Okay.
really wanted to make sure you guys were all in the know and knew about both impending actions and opportunities. So I'm good.
Good, thanks. So SD core, do we have any? All right. What do we have on? Okay.
Isn't there a SMF problem with SD core right now?
Well, so I'm running SD core with the latest release. This does not happen to me when I have the previous 0.12.5, but when I update it to the latest, if I put any workload on it, the SMF fails and restarts multiple times. And this is arguably related to how do we make these known to the core team. I was gonna, obviously I could send AJ a note about it, and I was gonna do that, but I thought I'd save it for the TST call just to see if we had a more robust general approach to this.
Well, I believe the QA team has already raised this. They've run into the same problem.
Okay.
Considering
Yeah,
inter-
and I believe Ajay kind of acknowledged that over the email as well. This was in the same email that Larry, you have had initiated, I believe. And Ajay there said that he was going to work on it last week or so. We are still waiting for him to give us an update whether this is fixed or not.
Okay, great. So it's not just me, thanks. All right, there's nothing else to do on that one for right now. So let's move on to the QA status. I'll let you guys.
If we have anybody here that can give us a status update on that problem.
I was looking at that. I don't see anyone.
I guess not. Okay. All right.
Okay. So go ahead with the 1.3 testing status.
Yeah, so for SD core release 1.3 testing status is logged because we are waiting for SD core Helm chart to be released, and as last time Ajay has shared that they are working on it and will get a release soon. We have started writing few test cases as well. We have written 7 out of 8 test cases for 7 out of 8 features, and we have shared the same in the testing manual. So, which is already shared with the dev team. So they are also reviewing it, and we have got some review comments on one of the features. So overall, we could not start the testing because of SD core Helm chart release is yet to be done.
So is it because you don't have the Helm chart for SD core or because of the SMF problem?
Yeah, in the Helm chart, I think they are going to address that issue as well. So SMF was crashing with their.
So I'm also confused. I didn't know this was a problem that could be I didn't interpret this as a Helm chart problem. They have released the SD core Helm chart.
Yeah, I think they were after taking that Helm chart, the SMF was getting crashed. That is what I got from the last discussion with them, and they'll be fixing it on the maybe on this Helm chart and integrated with the AIEB.
So I think, let me say this a little differently and see if you agree, which is it's not the testing is blocked per se, it's that there's a bug and you're waiting for the fix to the bug. I mean, you've got everything you need to do testing, and the tests are failing, and you've reported that to the developers, and you're waiting for a bug fix. Is that how you see it, or is it something you can't even test it?
So what is this point? I'm sorry, I just joined.
So we're possibly mixing two different things here. One is I was commenting about how the SMF pod restarts many times over when you put GNB sim workload on it, and now we move on to the QA status and their bullet on waiting for a Helm chart release, and I was wondering if these were related.
This was done right last week after the TST meeting. David helped to push the charts.
Right. Okay. That's what I thought. So this is
Yeah.
chart released last week. But so that was the point I raised.
Larry, I'll take a look. You're saying that if we run the AIB, it keeps restarting?
Yeah, well, this SMF keeps restarting.
Okay, I'll check it.
So I ran the so it just restarts once if I just run whatever it is, profile 2. But if I run the custom workload, which, you know, repeats it multiple times over, every time through the SMF pod restarts. And then when I get done, I forget the exact number, but it was like at least a third of the UE tests are failing on total.
Yeah, I think if it is so easily reproducible, it should be easy to fix as well. So
Okay.
yeah,
So,
I'll take a look. Yeah.
So
I'll
bug now
update.
reported and it's in progress, right?
So, but AJ, my understanding from the QA team is that they had already reported this bug, but it sounds like you
Where?
haven't heard about it until now. So I think there might be a communication gap somewhere. So,
Well, Timon, that's not clear to me, but go ahead.
well, I guess I'd like to hear from the QA team, you know, how they communicated this bug and who acknowledged it and what their understanding of status or next steps is.
Yes.
Yeah, we have discussed it over the TST and tracking
No,
it.
can you work on your mic? I'm having trouble hearing you.
Am I audible now?
I'm having trouble. I'm still having trouble hearing you. Can you try again? Or get closer to your mic?
Hello?
Yes.
Is it better?
Not a lot, but if that's the best you can.
It's not a volume, it's more of a muffled.
Okay. So I think we discussed it in the last TST about this SMF issue we are seeing. So
Okay, I'm just looking at last week's notes, and there is a note on that.
yeah.
But then somehow
And there was one last job was left that needs to be triggered or maybe completed. Then there is that is what we got in the last meeting. We were waiting a status from dev team to start on that.
I could not hear, but somebody can tell me like where it was reported.
It was reported in the TST, it looks like.
But that's not the place to report, right? Okay.
Yeah, so let me brief this. So there was an email thread going on with the new SD core release where Kunal has initiated that, and to that Larry has replied on 9th of May, I believe, where he was experiencing some SD core Helm chart related issues, which I believe Ajay said that that's something that I will do this week. Once the Helm chart release are cut, then adding that option would be an easy. So that is what the latest we have on that.
But that doesn't point to the crash, right? Larry was just saying, if I'm not wrong, like when we do make test, the option of putting the release, which release you want to test. Otherwise, make test just takes the latest charts.
Right.
So, but that was not pointing anything to the crash or block or anything.
Yeah, I think there's been some confusion in exactly where the problem was. There's a bit of a unnecessary coupling of the Helm chart release number and this particular problem. So this is a bug that does not appear in 12.5, does appear in 13. And this form is probably not the right one to report these bugs, which kind of gets back to the main top bullet, which we have not spent any time on, and we're running out of time now. And that is how we report issues
and track issues
and track issues. Thank you.
Right. And this is really critical. I mean, it's clear here. I think we lost a week, you know, for a communication problem.
So let me just do a quick look here. There's a lot of detail in the QA. Let me try to move through this quickly so we can get to that discussion. And I want to make sure so the 3-node cluster, I think we now have 2 implementations of how to make it work, which is good. My ask of GS Labs would be to suspend this work. I won't take a look at what you've done if it's checked in somewhere and passed it along to the student, but he's well into it, and there's other issues that need to be addressed to make this all workable that he's working on. Okay, we now have the Helm chart for rock. We just discussed that. I'm going to guess there's no new information on the hardware. I'm guessing you don't have it, do you?
The only thing to discuss is that, it's on me to purchase another CIRCOM G-Node B, but, we've been put off that Purdue got a quote for $10,000 for that CIRCOM G-Node B. And I guess, we got a quote for like $6,500 or something, but, it just, the really poor availability is making me wonder if the TST believes that, that CIRCOM G-Node B is still the place for us to invest, or if there's really some other 5G radio where we should be putting our efforts, because we want to be testing on something that the community can also, get their hands on and use. So that in that way, it's relevant for the TST, I believe.
It is. Thank you. Well, so let's not rush through this. Let's spend the time here, and we will continue to work the JIRA issue, and maybe we'll start there next time just to make sure we get coverage on it. But I mean, what are the alternatives?
I don't know. Are there other people here, or people from Pidgeot? What radios are you using most predominantly now?
We're still doing 4G because, like you said, most 5G radios are not available yet. We did temporarily have our hands on a prototype from Bicells. It was an Aurora 243. That's now out at a customer site, so we don't have, it's not in our lab. Maybe that would be that's what comes to mind. Is Bicells is usually a cheaper solution than most of the others, and they should be releasing it soon. Maybe we could get a prototype for the TST. I don't know. I think it's worth pursuing. I mean, it would help them as well. So
Yeah.
So and then okay. Anybody else have any feedback? Anybody know about a Mavenir option? No. Yeah, so I mean, the market is kind of stuck in this state right now, and it kind of has us stuck as well. So maybe that's enough of an update for right now, Larry. I don't want to use the
Okay. Infrastructure. Are we still stuck on AWS connectivity?
At the moment, yes. We do need to set up a piece with the GS Lab IT group and myself. Tried to do that last night, but I didn't get back to my computer in time. So hopefully we can set that up today or tomorrow, Cigar.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
And on this last point, it's actually related to what we were talking about with the on-ramp issue above. NG4T, I don't know, Timon, do you have any updates there? But what I'm going to suggest is that maybe we transition the GNB SEM. I mean, AJ could speak maybe to this a little bit more better than I can, but just from my conversations with Shabazz, it seems to be a pretty thorough functional test. It's not going to put the same performance load, although it will put performance load on the control plane. It will not put performance load on the data plane or the user plane. Is that a correct statement?
That's right. But I had asked in one of the documents what was floated as a test document is that we should explore the UV ransom, which is very easy to be installed on a VM, and we can do a lot more testing with that as well. So I don't know what's the UV ransom.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one more open source tool. Yeah. And
Do
this
you
will be widely
know?
used.
So the way that we are refactoring to pull the Genode vSIM out of SD core and run it separately, and then therefore scale it separately, would work in a way that's consistent with UE ransom. They both will be external to the Kubernetes cluster that's hosting SD core. And in principle, you could even run a combination of physical Genode Bs and Genode vSIMs and UE ransoms, all pointed at the same cluster. So that's the goal.
Right.
I'm sorry. So I was going to ask specifically if you know if UE ransom does give you the stress test of the user plane.
It is VM-based tool where you get the tunnel interfaces are created where we can run the high perf to get the good amount of to put good amount of data through the core, right? So it can be used for some kind of performance test as well.
So let me just point it this way. Transition to a combination of GNB SIM where we stress test the control plane, and UE ransom where we can run iPerf on the user plane.
Yeah.
So maybe not scale of the user plane, but that's fine. We can. I think this might be the appropriate answer to this problem. I mean,
I agree.
I hate to pin on that for that commercial simulator in the kind of project we have.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that, Sagar, I guess what I would look to the QA team is to, let's just put the NG4T tests aside. Like if we get that tester and we can turn it on, great. But right now we just assume that that's all going to be deprecated and that we just work out a set of tests using these two open source tools to provide the best coverage we can. And to define, what testing will be done. I think the TST here could maybe put a stake in the ground for a date, but we have a candidate latest that we want to transition to stable with a certain level of testing. Sure. And we're looking to use these tools to do a certain level of testing to get, and a real, radio and get us to the, to a point of comfort to declare it stable.
Sure. Yeah.
So I said it depends on OnRamp is in the middle of a refactoring multi-node thing that will support both UE ransom and GNB SIM, but today we can still run GNB SIM with I don't know what to call it, complex custom workload.
Well, they can just be. Are you talking about running them both at the same time?
Well, eventually, if we want to be able to test both the control plane and the user plane, we're going to need to be able to run both of them. But I'm just saying today, and that depends on the way we're pulling Genode vSIM out of the core and running it separately, which is the way UE ransom runs today. But today, even with them before that refactoring, you can still run a more complicated, sophisticated workload against the core. I'm sorry, against the control plane.
So how do we get to maybe a document or a list of the tests using these two tools that we should aspire to create and run?
Well,
and how?
The CP, the control plane feature for now will be documented in OnRamp next release, next update. We are calling them releases just yet.
What's the timing on that?
It's in progress now. I would hope within 2 to 3 weeks. Control plane. Yeah.
So, and that's using the ENB sim.
That's using GNP to sim, right?
And but we could presumably, or the QA team could get started with the UE RAN sim.
Well, no, that depends on this split that's happening in on-ramp. So being able to run both and therefore run UE RAN sim depends on the on-ramp refactoring.
So I'm getting confused by this. So, but there is also, I mean, Ether in a box, and Ether in a box was running against UE RAN sim in the past.
I'm sorry, there is a student in Italy who has done that. We have not incorporated it back. We could go out and pull it in, but I would rather not have yet another way of doing that.
And you're talking about UE RAN sim with Ether in a box?
No, I'm talking UE RAN sim with on-ramp. Well, I'm sorry, what exists today is somebody else has augmented Ether box. It's not the standard one to support UE RAN sim. I don't know in any detail how they did that. What I do know is that when the Shabazz and his student are done decoupling out GNB sim, then whatever they've done should also work directly with UE RAN sim.
Well, we're kind of out of time, and so this is not perfectly clear to me, and somehow we need to have...
Well, so the point here is this is test against SD core, which we're already testing SD core in the control plane. We have to get past that hurdle first. Let's pick it up again next week. We'll pick this up. I think what you're doing now with the testing of SD core using what we already have in place, we can sufficiently test it in the control plane. The value in bringing UE RAN sim is that we can run iPerf and performance tests against the user plane, but that is not an issue that we have come anywhere near addressing yet.
So you're saying that GNB sim is right now sufficiently integrated with SD core that the QA team can do that testing now.
What's available right now they can do is sufficient to test the control plane of SD core.
And that's in on-ramp.
And it's in both Etherbox and on-ramp.
Okay, so in that case, what should we give preference to on-ramp or should we give preference to AIAP?
You can run it in either one, and I don't know how to tell you which one to give precedence to. Sure, run it in on-ramp, because if that's where we're going to transition to, then go ahead and do it there. And the key is, which I can send you some notes offline, is you need to enable the custom profile.
Okay.
So preference for on-ramp makes sense, but I think in this period also testing it on Ether in the box would make sense as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
The custom profile is available in both on-ramp and Etherbox.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Okay, so considering the confusions that we have had earlier regarding the Helm charts and the SMF crashing and things, so that has been resolved, and we can now go ahead and start the SD core testing, SD core release version 1.3 testing right from tomorrow. Is that the correct understanding?
You should be able to do that, yeah. SD core testing, yeah.
Right. I just had to clarify one point. If you can just go to the statuses of the previous meeting, which is May's previous meeting. Yeah, and there if we say give me a minute. Yeah, the one, yeah, exactly. The Aether QA status, just the line above that. The documentation and Helm chart CI jobs continue to fail. Manually triggering jobs is necessary right now, requires DAB help. So that is where this was a little bit confusing to us, that whether those things are, I mean, the SD core once is released or not. Yeah, you see what I mean?
No, I'm not. Which line are you pointing at?
Yes. Your pointer is on the SD core status.
Yes.
Just the third point after that. Documentation and Helm chart CI jobs continue to fail. Right?
I don't, yeah.
Yeah,
That
and then
as AJ and Ankur were trying to put together the SD core Helm charts to push the SD core release, when they did, there were intermittent problems getting them run successfully. It wasn't functional. It wasn't it wasn't functional. It wasn't code. It was infrastructure issues. When we reran them, not even making changes, things were successful. But they pushed all of their Helm chart, all their SD core code out and fully released everything.
Oh, okay. So that was the confusion.
So it is done now.
Okay, yeah, okay. Because that's what he said, that every time he does any changes, it needs your DAF's helps to do that and stuff like that. So that's where we were waiting for. Thanks for clearing these things out. Would have been easier if Jay and team would have responded onto the Slack so that we could have saved a couple of days there. Anyways, thank you.
So I know we're out of time.
Yeah.
But I mean, on this whole issue of Jira, I mean, don't we already have the Jira boards set up? And isn't it just a matter of saying, hey, we're going to use these Jira boards for reporting and tracking issues?
We do have an Aether project in the O&F wiki that I believe all Aether users have access to. There's also an Aether QA project that was intended to track infrastructure issues involving the Aether QA lab setup. But the Aether project in that same space would be presumably for Aether functionality.
So we're basically just saying there's an Aether Jira that we're proposing we use. And we migrate everything to community and QA reported problems and tracking.
So probably need to open. Can we change it to will open?
It already exists.
Yeah.
It just needs to be used. If
Is there permissions need to be adjusted?
I don't think so from observation, but I get surprised. So if people could just ping it.
Okay, already exists.
I'll just put in chat a link. If everyone could just hit that link over the next week and let me know if they can or cannot access it. I can double check and make sure things will work.
It's
in the chat.
I got it. I'll copy it.
And so the third point hit here, start using it. Yeah.
So, Sagar and team, can you report these initial bugs? Both the SMF problem there and anything new that comes up?
Yes, definitely. I believe I have filed few issues on the Aether on ramp initial testing on the same link. I'll have to just log in and re-verify that. And for the other ones that we'll be seeing from tomorrow onwards, we'll be definitely using that.
Remember, we have two separate projects: Aether for Aether functionality, and Aether QA to track any internal issues we have with setting up the testing environment. That's separate from the Aether product functionality.
All right. Okay. Yeah, we'll be using this. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure I'm logged in right now. Okay, maybe this will just work. There it is.
Yep.
Now, what we're going to need to do is there's probably some stuff in here that is 100 years old. Yep. This is the problem, Timon.
Significant pruning is required here. You're going to allocate some time just to triage these issues and decide what's worth looking at.
So is it really worth using this?
We need to track issues somewhere other than Slack and TST.
I completely agree with that, but should we just set up a clean place? I'm not sure exactly how that would turn out. Would it be a project under this or?
Well, what I can easily do
A
is
filter?
close everything as won't fix and just make it obsolete so there's no noise, and we just start fresh with what people find
Let's
out.
do that. I mean, we could spend forever trying to analyze this and it's probably not relevant.
Okay, I'm happy to say things will still be there for reference purposes, but they won't show up on anybody's dashboard of things to pay attention to.
Okay, so I'm just gonna make note, DAF will close all old issues. Good.
Okay.
That's a good result. Thank you. All right, sorry for running over, but I think we got a little something accomplished today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Well.